I feel like there should be a camera in the background.
There we go.
Horror movies, mutilation, decapitation, torture. Does that sound entertaining? More blood than a blood bank. Have we got your attention?
Hi, welcome back to Video Waste Interviews Artist. I'm sitting here with Fredericksburg's photographer, Adrian Elliott. So I wanted to talk to you about photography because that's your main bag. So let's start at the beginning. What got you interested in photography?
Probably skating. My first camera was a video camera from filming me and my friends skating. From there I did take photojournalism in high school, and I took it in college as well. I took photo in college. Both of those were film-based classes, so 35 millimeter film. And then later on after college, I went back to school for digital photography, which was nice. Like, I learned studio photography that way. And then learned just really more resources for photo and things like that. So that's where that came from as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember going to that school.
The school in DC.
Yeah.
I went to school in DC, which is an hour from here. It was a cool school, like, just because you'd have like 3 weeks with, a wedding photographer, and then you'd have 3 weeks with, say, like a commercial photographer, a guy who did portraiture, or somebody who was a storyteller. So I got to learn a lot of different aspects of photography, which I guess could probably say definitely influence more now than they did then. Like, when I was shooting then, it was more of just playing with a lot of expensive gear and figuring out what was fun. So I was mostly portraiture based then, but that's kind of coming back around now.
All right, so a lot of times in art we talk about style. Do you consider yourself having a specific style? I know you mentioned portraits, but I've seen you shoot a lot of other things, so...
Style is, I guess, a topic of debate right now, because I'm in the middle, really, of transitioning away from kind of a fashion, like, pop style that I did to a more documentary style. I've been looking at a lot more long-term projects that people do, and doing a couple of shorter but more focused projects of my own. So that's been more of kind of learning how to fuse this over-the-top, like, portraiture style with also a more documentary aspect to it. And I haven't quite figured out the way that I want to do that yet. So all these little projects are kind of the stepping stones to practicing a lot of things and trying out a lot of new techniques and failing a lot, messing up a lot of stuff, and figuring out what's going to work for ultimate long-term goals and projects.
All right. So what do you look for in a picture when you go to take the picture of somebody, whether it's portrait or just natural surroundings like at a bar or on the street? Is there something that strikes your eye that makes you decide that that's the image you need? Like, what is that?
I guess I never really thought about that at length. It's as corny as it is to say, it's just kind of whenever it feels right. Like, shooting for me it's a much easier way for me to approach people. It's a much easier way for me to kind of keep... It's more of a defense mechanism, honestly, because I am a very private person. Are you serious right now? I'm doing an interview. You're embarrassing me. It's more of anything like a defense mechanism for me, because I am a very private person. So it's kind of one of those things where it's easier for me to approach people, and then, plus people always like somebody who has a camera and can use it very well. So, like, it's allowed me to have a lot of interesting relationships that I probably would have normally not had the self-esteem to pursue otherwise, which has been a good and a bad thing, like, for my personal life in some ways, but learning more now how to be both more personal, behind the camera, and just with people in my personal life as well.
Interesting. I know you mentioned that you took classes and you started out with film. Are you all digital now, or do you still play with film?
I actually hardly shoot digital anymore. I've done like some recent projects like that I did for other people were digital, but my personal work has all gravitated to 35 millimeter and medium format film. So I don't do any printing of my work per se. Like I did recently do a photo show, but I don't normally print my work for sale or anything. Maybe soon in the future that's something I want to do, but I primarily shoot, develop, and scan all my negatives now. So I'm sitting like on a ton of work that isn't really put together or anything. Hopefully it will be culminated into something soon that I'm kind of working on, but right now it's more getting the process down of shooting and developing film, which is like I've known how to do for a long time, but to be able to like have the vision for it, shoot it, and it come out the way that you need it to almost every time is a different story. And
right.
After shooting film for no other reason than for myself for like the last year and a half, 2 years, like now I'm finally starting to get to the point where I'm getting comfortable and I know what I like. I know what films I like to use. I'm like greatly reducing the amount of cameras that I use. I used to use so many cameras and just was trying out things left and right, but now I primarily use like a very small group of cameras to get most of my work done. And I'm still like trying to even that down to even less. Because the theory is that if I can get really proficient with just a few things, then I don't spend as much money, because film photography is incredibly expensive. From developing chemicals to film itself, to buying 30-year-old cameras that fall apart constantly. Yeah. So, yeah, but I rarely shoot digital. Like I actually have to kind of remind myself and force myself to shoot digital, because it is a very easy and disposable medium. Like it's not like with film, like I can't just roll out and not be into it and just be shooting film like willy-nilly. Yeah. Like I gotta want to be out there, because every time you're clicking that button, like that shutter, you just hear the like the cash register like go off in your head like each time, and then like you mess it up, or you see a photo that you're obviously like sometimes I get kind of tipsy and like I take a film photo and I'm looking at like this roll after I've like spent half an hour 45 minutes developing it, and then like half an hour 45 minutes scanning it, and then coloring it in Photoshop, and it's like picture of my feet with like a condom. Like, you're like, all right, like in the moment that was probably artistic, but now like it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
So it causes you to slow down a little bit more and take it a little bit more seriously, I guess.
All right, fair enough. So what has photography brought to your life? Like what lessons have you learned through photography?
Besides alcohol and drug addiction.
Down his condom pictures.
Photography's brought a ton to my life. It's a constant. I like to wrestle with things. So photography is something that I can always struggle with. Like I do enjoy the process of doing things, and so this is always an ever evolving process. So it definitely fills a void where like from skating before, like you learn to just kind of keep wrecking yourself until you get it eventually. Right. So I think that kind of carried over into photography for me, of just like constantly like dumping time and money, and like there have been times where like I've been in here and like been ready to throw everything off this table and like develop things, and they didn't come out, and you're hinging everything on this roll of film like coming out, and it doesn't come out, and you throw it in the trash, and you're like, and I'm done, like I'm not shooting it anymore, like I'm done doing this. Like there's times where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know why I do this. This is so stressful.
Yeah.
And then there are other times where it goes really well and you enjoy it, and then you look back and you're like, well, I enjoyed that whole process really as much as I moaned about it. So now it's just more controlling those feelings and like trusting the process of not just trying to beat it into submission, but if you're just failing, like you're failing for a while, like you'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, it's like stressful and annoying in the moment, but it's cathartic after, and you realize they're
getting more sun. Sorry, viewers.
Yeah,
I have no art on my walls to bounce any of this light.
I can do it in the editing.
There we go. In post, as they say.
Yeah, post. All right, so kind of answered that one, but I'll ask it anyways.
Bring it up.
So, passion. Clearly, you have a passion for this to continue doing this for this long. Do you struggle with finding the passion sometimes, or is it always there?
It's really not that it's struggling with finding the passion. It's like figuring out the way to present it the right way. Like a lot of stuff that I want to shoot, like I'm not there yet.
Right.
And I shoot. A lot of times I'm shooting people that I know, so like it's tough to show. Like some things I just can't show. Like I have photos of people that just can't be seen. Like they're people in compromising situations or like doing things that, you know, they could legit get in trouble for in their actual lives. So it's once I get to a point where I'm shooting people who aren't that, like, which sounds incredibly exploitative, right? Like, well, once I get to a point where I can show people like doing drugs or whatever it is, right? But those are all the photographers that I look at. But it's the passion is really always there because it's really highly connected to everyday life,
Right.
And like that's kind of been the ongoing. Stop it. That's kind of been the ongoing. Struggle is to find a way to, I guess, almost cinematically document the theater that is real life. It's incredibly artistic to say, but yeah, that's really the struggle that I have. Was like, how does that passion play out, and also like not letting my passion exploit those people that I take photographs of, and like honoring them in a good light, you know, because I've had my camera in situations where that were incredibly private for the people involved.
Right.
And you know, I have taken photos in those moments and not shared them, or just not taken photos.
Right.
Like, and I think a lot of people who are around kind of respect that as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't let me around as much as they do, you know, with my camera. So it is a privilege to be invited in when you have something like I always do constantly with me. Like, so, you know, people to feel comfortable enough to really be themselves is, I guess, a testament to what they feel about my work and what I do.
Right. And that's got to be tough too, because those are probably some of the more fun pictures.
Oh yeah. And like one day,
Right.
years and years and years from now, like I can put out something where, you know, it'll be distant memory of people be like, is that, you know, so and so, or like present it in a way.
Right.
I've even thought about that, presenting it in a way of cropping photos so that certain things are almost redacted. Ooh, that would be like a good name for that. Redacted. Look at that. You heard it here first. It's as organic as that. It really.
Well, they always say that, you know, a picture is a story captured in time. So it's like,
true.
You know,
They're time machines.
Those are going to be fun stories at some point.
Cameras,
they're already.
Cameras are time machines. I've always said that. It's the true and only version of a time machine we have right now.
Let's see. What projects do you have?
Working on a book. Big old book on Fredericksburg that's going to take a long time for me to complete. So don't ask me about it.
All right.
But no, yeah, I'm working on kind of my love letter to Fredericksburg, which is going to be something I'll be working over the course of the next few years. And to do that more so, I'm working on like little mini photo diaries of kind of some people that I know. And just kind of picking some ideas, and some of them I've started on and then they don't really pan out, and I'm like kind of going back and forth. But I've got a few ideas that I've written down. So wintertime's kind of messing things up, it being cold outside. I do like to shoot outside a lot. So I'm currently struggling to find indoor spaces to shoot in, or just like activities to do. Like we went out to Shenandoah last week, and like that's really not my wheelhouse in terms of like shooting photos. So it was like fine when we were like in the town, but then like we go to these overlooks to shoot, and I'm like kind of lost in terms of like what the hell do I do out here? Because you see these landscape photos and you're like, oh wow, that's beautiful, and you think a dude just like went out there and like clicked the button, but you don't know he like camped out for 3 days and woke up at like 3 a.m. and then again at like 4 a.m. and then again at like 5 a.m. to like get the same shot of the same mountain, but at different times a day. You know, it took him like 4 days to get there. Yeah, like landscape is just kind of not my thing. So that was fun to go do. So I'm doing a lot of stuff like that too, where I'm just going out and blatantly failing and like knowing it's gonna go terribly. But there's a lot of fun in that too, because it keeps me shooting and it keeps me active.
All right.
That question answered.
All right. Well, is there anything that you want to say about photography or, its importance and the role that it plays in our lives?
Oh man, I think if you don't have a camera, you should get one. One that's not your phone.
Right.
And I can't stress that enough. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, like phones are ruining the fabric of society. But like, I think
they are. But
I think there's something to be said about working with like the slower medium of like maybe not even like necessarily film photography, but like get yourself a cheap digital camera, like, and take some photos of just the things that are important to you. Like, there's no better way to show people how you see things than if you're taking photos. And like, they don't have to be good. Like, I take a lot of bad photos. Like, most of the photos that I take are bad. Like, that's the difference between me and other people, is that whereas most people are like, I'm bad at photography, like, they just say that because they don't take enough photos. I take so many photos that I get good ones. It's like, photographers aren't just good at shooting photos. We take so many bad ones that it increases the likelihood of us getting a good one. And yeah, it does help like a little bit. You learn to recognize situations and how people are. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times you just got to be there. You got to have a camera in your hand and hope for the best.
Have you learned through photography kind of like anything about human nature?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you see the same setups getting ready to happen and you photograph those things.
Especially with me shooting in bars, like, I see a lot of the way that people interact. I see a lot of that. Because, like, there's a lot of times where I'm just, like, there's a lot of times I go out by myself, like, where I'm shooting in bars, just kind of roaming from bar to bar, and, like, you see kind of how, like, the opposite sex and, like, the same sex, and how young men versus, young women, how they present themselves and how they react. And how they react when they notice the camera's around, or when they don't think it's around. So, yeah, no, I notice a lot about people and mannerisms and things like that. So it's strange how many like organic patterns there are.
Yeah.
Like amongst people in society.
Yeah. That just came to me. I was like, man, if you shoot like the same surroundings, you probably see the same patterns forming. All right, well, it's been good to talk to you. Black lives do matter. And you got anything you need to say? Anything you want to tell people?
It's very hot one's ask of being like, tell the people what you're doing. Like, I'm not that popular. I go to work and I come home and I shoot photos when I can. That's what I got going on. Just trying to wrap up 2020 like everybody else.
I wasn't rolling out the red carpet.
Trying to wrap this thing up, man.
There's
like,
one camera to look at.
It's been a hell of a year. Like, lots of everybody's had a year. Like, I think that's what I'll leave it with. Just everyone's had a year. Like, it's been a rough year.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate you letting me come on here and do this.
Yeah, no problem.
Being,
nobody's gonna see it. Nobody's gonna watch it.
Hey, but the few people that do watch it, we're gonna be proud of it, because that's why we do this.
Yeah.
For the few fans.
All right. Well, I appreciate you letting me sit down with you, and we'll see you next time.
Watch Video Waste. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
There we go.